Why did the United States declare Antarctica off limits? Because on the ice of this uninhabited region, there is a drilling platform that has never been revealed to the public. More than 30,000 feet beneath the platform, a massive research base has been built deep underwater. There, humans discovered an unknown life form with a liquid-like body. These creatures have no fixed shape, their bodies resemble countless tiny particles glowing blue. To keep them from changing, the researchers have to seal them inside special containers and continuously heat the glass chambers just to keep them stable for the time being. One woman is about to touch them out of curiosity, but her colleague quickly stops her because the researchers have already discovered that these glowing creatures may be highly intelligent. They can not only sense changes around them but also react differently to their environment. What makes the discovery even more tempting is that scientists have found large deposits of extremely rare minerals in their habitat. They contain a key element needed to build interstellar spacecraft. This metal is far rarer than most people could imagine, and even a tiny sample could be worth $100 million. Faced with such an enormous profit, the company executives quickly order further exploration of the deep sea. They put Easter in charge of piloting the submersible and assemble a temporary deep-sea exploration team. The base personnel begin the final safety checks on the submersible. At the same time, the launch chamber rapidly begins filling with seawater. Once the chamber is completely flooded, Cameron immediately orders the outer doors opened. Neither man realizes that this seemingly routine mission will nearly leave them trapped forever at the bottom of the ocean. As the outer doors slowly open, Easter pulls the controls and launches the submersible. It follows the route programmed in advance and slowly enters the bottomless darkness. As they look around, there is no sign of marine life anywhere near the base. Beyond the reach of their lights lies complete darkness. The only thing they can see is the faint patch of light surrounding the submersible. The submersible has been traveling for an hour, but nothing has appeared on the radar. As Easter checks the navigation system, they suddenly hear a strange noise in the distance. It is low and muffled, as though somewhere in the darkness ahead a massive unknown creature is hiding from view. This dive has already gone deeper than any previous mission. The control room can see they are approaching the target coordinates, but Bremer soon delivers even worse news. The submersible is running low on oxygen, and they have no more than 15 minutes left. The submersible continues forward for several more minutes until a huge shadow finally appears in the dim light. Everyone in the control room immediately grows tense. Cameron reports the unusual sound detected by sonar. Rose uses the communication system to relay their next instructions to Easter, but Bremer reminds everyone again that their remaining oxygen will not last much longer. At that moment, the submersible finally reaches the coordinates. The two men discover the wreckage of an alien spacecraft ahead. Even more strangely, the broken metal fragments have not sunk to the seafloor. Instead, they appear almost weightless, suspended motionless in the surrounding water. Easter immediately transmits the images back to the control room. Faced with a completely unknown situation, Bremer believes moving any closer is too dangerous and argues with the executives who insist on continuing. But Easter has already made his decision. He plans to send Cameron outside to inspect the wreckage. Only then does Cameron begin putting on the deep-sea diving suit. The entire suit weighs more than 1,000 pounds. He can only drag the heavy equipment forward as he slowly steps out of the submersible. When he finally reaches the wreckage, he discovers that the alien spacecraft has been almost completely crushed by the deep-sea pressure. Inside the twisted metal structure, only a few narrow gaps remain large enough to enter. Easter remains inside the submersible, watching Cameron's every move with growing tension. Cameron slowly makes his way into the wreckage, but he has barely gone inside when he finds a human body, leaving even the experienced Cameron frozen in fear. Easter calls his name several times before Cameron finally responds over the radio. After confirming there is no immediate threat nearby, Cameron attaches a towing device to the wreckage so they can bring it back to the research base. But as he secures the equipment, that strange noise echoes around the base again, as though something in the darkness has noticed everything they are doing. Once the towing system is secured, the two men prepare to return to the base. The alien creatures in the laboratory suddenly become extremely agitated. The blue particles churn violently inside the glass chambers as though they can sense a call coming from deep beneath the ocean. Easter has no idea what is happening inside the base and continues towing the wreckage back in the submersible. But as the submersible moves forward, large clouds of glowing particles appear in the darkness behind them. The particles quickly gather together and race through the water toward the submersible. Base personnel see the footage and rush into the control room, shouting for Easter to look behind him. Only then does everyone realize that the real danger has only just begun. A massive swarm of unknown creatures forms behind the submersible. Within moments, they surround it from every direction, countless tiny particles moving as if they share a single mind, circling continuously around the entire submersible. The invisible force grows stronger and flips the heavy submersible upside down. Cameron instinctively tries to increase the power and escape, but Easter immediately stops him because they have no idea whether activating the thrusters will provoke the creatures even further. They hope that by remaining still, the alien creatures will eventually leave. But the next second, they begin attacking the submersible. Large numbers of particles attach themselves to the outer hull as if deliberately searching for weak points. Within just a few seconds, the external pressure system is severely damaged. The relentless assault quickly fills the cabin with white smoke. Easter desperately contacts the control room for help, but the towing system connected to the wreckage also begins malfunctioning. The submersible structure cannot hold much longer. If the pressure system fails completely, the deep-sea pressure will crush the entire vessel in an instant. At the same time, the towing equipment connecting the base and the submersible begins sounding a piercing alarm. Realizing the danger, the engineers shout for everyone to move away. The moment the warning is given, the tightly stretched cable snaps. With the connection severed, the submersible is dragged deeper into the darkness, and the control room loses their signal. At the same moment, Rose repeatedly calls Easter over the radio, but from the depths of the ocean, no response ever comes back. Just as everyone prepares to send out a rescue team, the alien creatures attacking the submersible suddenly go completely still. But the two men are far from safe, because the pressure-resistant window at the front of the submersible is covered in spreading cracks. Trapped inside the cramped cabin, Easter and Cameron desperately search for a way to save themselves. Cameron suddenly suggests activating the high-frequency sonar and using sound waves to drive away the creatures surrounding them. As the cracks in the window continue spreading, the shock waves from the high-frequency sonar finally drive the creatures away, but the powerful sound waves also cause intense discomfort throughout the base. After Magnus repeatedly calls Easter, the submersible finally responds. Easter tells them that the pressure window could shatter at any moment and they do not have enough time to wait for a standard rescue. Bremer immediately contacts the surface team and orders them to prepare another rescue plan. Several base personnel take the elevator to the surface. They plan to use high explosives to break open the ice. When the team reaches the Antarctic surface, the freezing conditions make it difficult to even stay on their feet. At the same time, the control room tells Easter that the rescue operation has begun. Bremer orders the drilling platform activated. The massive frozen gears slowly begin to turn. Driven by the machinery, the entire platform begins moving downward. The three members of the demolition team push through the freezing wind and run toward the marked locations. But as Bremer watches the instrument readings, the drilling platform descends too quickly and begins shaking violently. The moment the platform hits the ice, its enormous weight punches through the surrounding surface, and countless cracks spread outward from beneath the platform. Meanwhile, the team on the ice begins placing the explosives while the research base deep below slowly rises under the pull of its propulsion system. Following the positions chosen in advance, they place each explosive at its assigned location. But as one team member runs across the ice, a sudden cracking sound beneath his feet stops him dead in his tracks. He looks down and realizes the ice beneath him is becoming dangerously thin. Through the ice, he can clearly see large numbers of alien creatures moving rapidly below. He immediately shouts a warning to the others, but before he can finish, the sound of cracking ice races toward them. Water is already pouring through the ice around the explosives. Magnus sees the danger and immediately runs toward safer ground, but another team member is so terrified that he remains frozen in place as the cracks beneath his feet rapidly spread to their breaking point. After quickly assessing the situation, Magnus and his teammate lie flat and slowly crawl toward him, trying to spread out their weight and keep the ice from breaking further. The man thrashes desperately in the freezing water, shouting for them to pull him out, but his panicked struggling causes the surrounding ice to break again. The man cries out that he cannot swim. The other two use all their strength to drag him out, but in the chaos, the detonator falls into the freezing water. Without the detonator, they cannot trigger the explosives they already planted. Magnus has no choice but to remove his glove and reach into the icy water for the device. The extreme cold makes him scream in pain. Within seconds, his hand is badly frostbitten. If he does not receive treatment soon, his arm may have to be amputated. After finally pulling their teammate onto the ice, they report back to the control room, and Magnus immediately presses the detonator. Powerful explosions echo one after another across the silent Antarctic ice. Even Easter and Cameron, trapped deep below, can clearly feel the force of the explosions. Under the repeated blasts, the drilling platform is finally freed from the ice. The control room activates the platform's thrusters. The spinning turbines generate enormous thrust, slowly pushing the entire platform toward the submersible. Just as the submersible is about to run out of oxygen, the rescue team finally reaches the two men. Easter and Cameron are safely returned to the research base at the last possible moment. Everyone believes that the deep-sea crisis is finally over, but only half a day later, a strange ring of light appears in the night sky, and at the same time, the magnetic fields at both poles begin to shift. Scientists conduct a detailed analysis of the deep-sea region. In the waters inhabited by the alien creatures, they discover enormous deposits of a mysterious mineral. The unusual element contained in the mineral is the key material needed to build interstellar spacecraft. The researchers officially name the alien life form the ancestor. After analyzing the samples, they discover that the ancestor has existed for billions of years. Even the extinction of the dinosaurs appears to be closely connected to this ancient life form. The company sent the submersible into their territory, which may be the real reason they attacked. More and more evidence suggests that the ancestor is not actively hunting humans, it is simply protecting its home and trying to stop humanity from stealing its resources. But as the team tries to understand the ancestor, another disturbance appears outside the research base. The ancestor's samples inside the glass containers begin reacting violently. Elsewhere, a member of the base personnel hears a strange sound, his eyes suddenly go blank, and he collapses without warning. His colleagues immediately rush over to check on him. Bremer believes the incident may be connected to the sonar pulse they used earlier. The high-intensity sound waves did not only harm the ancestor below, but they may also have changed the way it transmits signals. Rose believes waiting passively will only make the situation more dangerous. They must find the ancestor's weakness as soon as possible and destroy it completely if necessary. But the control room soon discovers that the ancestor has spread across a huge section of the seafloor. To launch an attack against the entire species, they will need a safer and more reliable plan. Meanwhile, hundreds of workers throughout the base begin showing similar symptoms. The medical center is soon overwhelmed with patients, and even the nurses caring for them are close to collapsing from exhaustion. Just when everyone runs out of options, the control room receives a mysterious transmission. It is an unusual sound wave coming from the seafloor, low and deeply unsettling. At first, everyone assumes it is simply the sound of a whale, but after repeatedly playing and analyzing it, they begin to recognize a pattern hidden within the sound. It seems as though the signal contains a deliberately structured message. When the surface team hears about the discovery, they immediately head to the laboratory. Magnus and the others arrive at the lab to determine what the sound wave is actually saying, but one of their colleagues tells them that the team member who collapsed earlier lost consciousness after hearing the same sound. Only then do they realize that the sound may not be an attack, it may be the ancestor's way of communicating with humans. The scientists worry that responding could trigger consequences capable of destroying the world, but the conflict between both sides is growing worse. Other than attempting communication, they have no better way to resolve the crisis. Easter begins investigating the area around the drilling platform, but the once white glacier near the platform is now leaking a blood-red liquid. Some believe the strange phenomenon may be connected to the ancestor beneath the ocean. One scientist immediately suggests going there to collect samples, but with a blizzard approaching, Magnus firmly rejects the request. However, when Magnus returns to the control room, he discovers that the scientist has already left the platform alone, braving the freezing conditions to investigate the red glacier. Magnus fears the scientist will die in the extreme cold and orders him to return over the radio, but the stubborn scientist refuses and continues toward the site. Magnus has no other choice but to take a team out and bring him back. By then, the blizzard is already raging. The team drives through the heavy snow, struggling across the endless Antarctic ice. A woman in the vehicle soon notices that more and more cracks are appearing in the ice. After only a few minutes, the once bright surroundings suddenly become as dark as night. The team gets out of the vehicle and walks toward a tent barely visible ahead. It's up at him, but the team member standing guard outside senses that something is wrong. He feels as though somewhere in the darkness countless eyes are watching him. When he turns to look behind him, a strange sound suddenly comes from the distant ice. Something dangerous is approaching. He rushes into the tent and warns Magnus about what is happening outside. The team quickly packs up the sampling equipment and prepares to leave the area, but when they follow their original route back, they can still reach the research base over the radio, yet the navigation system can no longer locate it. The control room turns on every searchlight, hoping the lights will guide them. Meanwhile, the ancestor samples inside the laboratory begin reacting again as if an invisible force is calling them back to another place. Magnus soon notices strange clusters of light appearing on the ice ahead. Realizing something is wrong, he turns the vehicle around their movements to send a message to the humans trapped inside. After watching for a moment, the scientist suddenly understands what the glowing particles actually respond. The ancestor, which had been moving violently, gradually becomes calm, and countless points of light begin flashing in rhythm with the sound. Humanity's first communication with extraterrestrial life finally takes place on the watch. But just as they believe the communication has succeeded, another strange sound comes from within the ancestor. Everyone assumes it is about to attack, but the glowing particles surrounding them slowly move aside and open a path for them to leave. After returning to the base, the scientist uses sound waves at different frequencies to conduct several more communication tests with the ancestor. But just as the experiments begin showing progress, another disturbance strikes the deep-sea research base. In an instant, everything surrounding the base turns blood red. The ancestor samples inside the glass chambers become more active than ever before, but the next second, the power system that had just malfunctioned suddenly returns to normal. The scientist immediately collects the altered red sample for testing. The test results show that the ancestor appears to be transmitting a special signal, but before they can determine what it means, Bremer suddenly storms into the laboratory. He takes a member of the base personnel hostage and tries to steal all the research data on the ancestor. Fulmer waits until Bremer is distracted, then tackles him and begins fighting for the weapon. During the struggle, Rose is accidentally shot and collapses to the floor. Bremer uses the chaos to steal the research data and quickly escapes from the base. But Rose is critically wounded and soon stops breathing. She dies in the arms of her companions. No one notices that something strange is happening to her wound. The next second, Rose, who is already dead, suddenly opens her eyes. It turns out that during the earlier experiments, the ancestor's genetic material had previously been introduced into her body. It is this powerful life force that repairs the fatal damage to her body. After forming a deeper connection with the ancestor, Rose finally understands its true intentions. The ancestor never wanted to destroy humanity. Every attack and act of resistance was simply an attempt to protect its own species. But the company executives have already decided to wipe it out. They believe that only by killing this unknown life form can humanity safely mine the rare minerals beneath the ocean. At that moment, a bomb carrying a deadly biological agent is released into the depths of the ocean. The executives see that the weapon has been activated and believe the extermination is complete. But when Rose learns what has happened, she immediately takes a submersible into the deep sea to help. After traveling for an hour, the two of them finally reach the ancestor's habitat. Rose puts on a heavy deep-sea diving suit and leaves the submersible alone, slowly walking toward the place where the ancestor once gathered. But the seafloor that once glowed blue is now completely lifeless. Large parts of the ancestor have been destroyed by the biological agent, reduced to gray dust drifting through the water. When Rose sees the devastation, she realizes she is too late. An ancient life form that survived for billions of years has been brought to the edge of extinction by humanity in only a matter of moments. Holding on to one last hope, Rose places her hand on the ancestor's remaining tissue. The moment they make contact, an invisible energy bursts from her body and spreads rapidly across the seafloor. The ancestor that appeared to be dead begins gathering back together. The gray particles that had lost their light gradually begin glowing blue again. Fulmer watches from inside the submersible, completely stunned by what he is seeing. The trace of the ancestor remaining inside Rose has awakened the dying organism. The revived ancestor once again shines brilliantly in the dark Antarctic depths. At that moment, Rose can clearly feel the joy coming from it. The entire lifeless seafloor suddenly comes alive again, and the blue light released by the ancestor grows brighter, rising through the depths of the ocean until it illuminates the surface above. People around the world watch the events in Antarctica unfold live on television. Only after seeing the blue light illuminate the ocean does humanity finally understand that the ancestor never intended to harm them. But after bringing the ancestor back, the submersible completely runs out of power. Rose and Fulmer no longer have enough time to return to the base. Just as they prepare themselves to remain in the deep sea and wait for death, the ancestor releases a tremendous force, slowly lifting the entire submersible and pushing it out of the deep ocean. Humanity used a weapon to push the ancestor toward extinction, yet in the final moment, it chooses to save the humans who were about to die. This expedition into the Antarctic depths appears to be a conflict between humanity and an unknown life form, but what it truly exposes is humanity's greed and arrogance when facing the unknown. When rare minerals worth a fortune are discovered around the ancestor, the company does not see a species that has existed for billions of years, it sees nothing more than a mine waiting to be exploited. When the ancestor finally lifts the submersible, it saves more than Rose and her companion, it also preserves humanity's final hope that, beyond greed and destruction, it can still choose communication and coexistence.